Well, good afternoon, David. Thank you very much for having us here today. And as I mentioned, the interview will basically I'll go with the flow.
Okay,
I'll ask you the questions that Hazel Faulkner has sent me for the
great.
Middlesex University students. And just to say thank you very much, and I'll allow you to introduce yourself because
Okay.
you'll probably do it much better than me.
Okay, so my name's David Dean. I've been living here in Rio since 1990, and it's a wonderful place to live. In 2012, I started my new kind of section in life as a person deeply involved in ecology and the well-being of nature. And this started from my connection with the plant medicines of Ecuador, notably ayahuasca. And since 2001, we've been having shaman coming over from Ecuador, sharing their plant medicines with us here in this house and in this area here. And in 2002, I was invited to Ecuador to stay with a shaman friend of the Shuar Nation in Ecuador, which was a great experience, as you can imagine. Uh, Over the years, many shaman came over here, and in 2012, I got a call from a shaman friend in Ecuador to assist and help in their resistance to an open pit copper and gold mine, which was going to be exploited and created in their lands. Since that time, it has been, and it is, and it exists. I just wanted to say that to give you an introduction as to how I became involved in work with the environment. So in 2012, I went over to Ecuador and I spent 3 months living in a Shuar village, close to where this mine was due to be exploited and created, in order to find out what the situation, how people were feeling, and how it was all going, or how it wasn't going. I built good relationships with people in the Shuar community, and also with NGOs in Quito, with Pachamama Alliance and Amazon Watch. Came back here to Spain, here to my house here, and we created here from our friends a resource site called Protect Ecuador, and that was the kind of the main thing. So and maps of the area, which showing the how do we I'm doing an arm, aren't I?
And no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
It's like the Shuar Nation, indigenous people, are not, generally speaking, great readers. So I felt that what we needed to do was to produce something visual. So I produced maps, did a Photoshop work on the maps, showing on the hydrological study maps how this was going to affect the water supplies, where this mine was going to be, the size of the mine, and then looking at the four elements: earth, air, wind, water, and how these four elements, these basic elements of life, are going to be affected by this mine. Mining 60,000 tons of rock every day and putting this rock into this mined rock into big lagoons of highly toxic waste. So that brought us through 2012. In 2013, I wrote an abstract for a conference in Australia, in Brisbane. And it was kind of like, blow me down. I was asked to talk about what my abstract was. Now, I've never been to university, and I actually didn't know what an abstract was. but I was invited to talk about the society's role in protection of fragile ecosystems and to give an update on the situation in Ecuador. At that meeting, I was staying in the hotel with a lady called Natty Green, who was convener for the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, and for a summit conference to be held in Quito with ecologists from around the world, like the Vandana Shiva, really peak ecologists. And so I said, Natty, if you think I'm going to be of some service, then I will, of course, I'll be there. And she invited me, so I went to Quito. And at that meeting, I met the convener for Rights of Nature Europe, and she asked me if I would undertake putting together a European citizens' initiative to bring 1 million votes from 7 countries of Europe to bring rights of nature into discussion in the European Parliament under the Lisbon Treaty. So I started to work on this with 2013, 2014. Made good alliance with the Ecocide group, and this is where our question about Ecocide comes in. I know it's a little bit of a long
it's
preamble.
fine. Ecocide in the Sorbas region.
Yeah, so
Sorbas
it came to this,
district.
and it was in 2014 that the decline in the water that I'd noticed in 2013, and I'd been writing to Almeria University, to Cave Club, saying, are you seeing a decline of water in your regions, or do you have experience of this in your cave explorations, etc.? And it was like, yes. And then in 2014, Almeria University with Jose Maria Calafora presented on Canal Sur these olive trees, which are way over the mountains there, but sit on top of the aquifer which supplies this river right here. And he said these olive trees are affecting this spring here, this nacimiento, this spring of water for our river, which has flown for thousands and thousands of years, so many years that we actually have Neolithic cave paintings higher up the valley out there, showing that there's been civilization, there's been habitation here for thousands of years. Just to expand a little bit on that, we have Roman tunnels up there on the mountain. You can see up there, and on the side of the hill there, we have about 150 meters of tunnels dug by the Romans, taking water from under the mountain. So perhaps 2,000 years ago there was a drought here, and they needed to do that. And at the moment, we're using the water from those tunnels to supply our village because the level of the river is down because of all these olive trees, which Jose Maria Calafora brought to the attention of the public in 2014. At the same time, group ecologists Mediterranean and Ecologists in Action brought 2 denuncios against the Junta de Andalucía for this extraction of water affecting this manantial, this spring, and this spring of water and this river is a corridor of biodiversity, so that we can use the word sustainability, so it sustains life through this area here, which was designated in 1986, 86, as a Parque Natural, because this is an area with endemic species and it is unique. And this water supply enables these endemic species to survive.
You mentioned that they reported them to who? To the authorities, to the police?
This would have been, these were denuncios, a denouncement where we say there's an illegal act.
Yes.
And then the denouncement goes to the head of the Medio Ambiente,
The Environment Agency.
the appropriate authorities in Sevilla.
So the regional government instead of national level?
Yeah, regional, absolutely, because we have Andalusia as its kind of semi-autonomous zone.
True.
So the only way that we can get leverage is really from the Junta de Andalucía. This is where we need to get the leverage.
Okay.
That was cool. I set up a Facebook site. I created 25,000 followers. I think we're now about 28,000 followers. I got in touch with Polly Higgins in 2013. I went over to England, and she said, David, good, you present this on our World Cafe going around the world. This is a clear case of ecocide.
Good.
So that's I think answers in a way Hazel's first question.
Very much, which was what has been your involvement with ecocide activities, and also what's your main issue with the large-scale olive plantations in the interior basin? So you've answered both those questions.
Okay, I can expand just a little bit on that.
do.
The other questions are fairly short and easy to go like yes, blah, blah, blah. I then went to the United Nations and I represented Rights for Nature, and I presented this case at the Geneva Forum in 2014, which is the United Nations forum. It's held in the United Nations buildings. And I said, it was, why do we need rights for nature? And we'd made a small documentary here. So I took 5 minutes out of that, because in these talks I get 10 minutes. I've got to put it like that.
Okay.
So I had 5 minutes, and part of that 5 minutes was our local shepherd here. When I say, hey, Jose, it's money. And he stepped back and he said, how much do you want? And shut your mouth. And that's it. And I showed this in the UN, and it's just like, that is actually how it is.
Yeah.
That is the problem here. It's money. Okay, so we can move along. Can you give us the next question?
Yes, the
Andy?
next question would be, can you explain their effect on the local water supply?
Yes.
Which you've also done, if you want to recap briefly.
I can put this quite succinctly when we turn to the facts, to actually what is happening in local populations. And here, as you can see, this beautiful landscape which is around us here, we do still have a small stream flowing down where you see all those trees down there. As we go higher up the river, there is no longer water.
Okay.
So what we have in the villages going up from Sorbas is about 3-4 kilometers as the water flows, maybe 5.
Mm-hmm.
We go up higher upstream from Sorbas. There's no longer water for people to grow their vegetables, keep their bees, a pig, a chicken, a duck.
Okay.
There's the possibility of sustainable living, which here in an area which is poor. This is a poor area. There's not industry here.
Mm-hmm.
People are leaving. They are leaving the land because they cannot survive. We see a village, let's say about 10, 12, 13 kilometers up, called Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha used to have over 100 inhabitants. It now has 4 or 5. There used to be a school. Sorbas used to take its water from Gotcha. It used to have beautiful orange trees and a lot of irrigatable land. That is finished. There is no water. There's only a small tube coming from the Ayuntamiento, coming from higher up, a place called Moras.
Mm-hmm.
Now Moras is also running out of water. So we have here, as a result, there's 2 whammies, shall we say. One whammy is 6 million olive trees. And if we say each olive tree takes 10 litres of water per day, that seems to be a kind of agreed average. So that looks to me like my arithmetic says that's about 60,000 tonnes a day.
Mm.
Now, okay, going to get a little bit technical. I hope your students are okay. A lot of numbers, I guess.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
but we're going to
We
look
will
at
be writing this down, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we're going to be looking at hectometers.
Mm-hmm.
A hectometer, and you can check this out, a hectometer is like 1 million tons, right? And so we have an estimated reserve here, last looked at in 2005 with a hydrological study, and we can give you students links to this also when
Yes.
wanted. Just give me the
Ideal.
word and I can send over by
Will do.
whichever way we want. And in that hydrological study, we have an estimated reserve in the aquifer of round about 100 hectometers, say 100 to 120 hectometers. Right now, we are taking out an estimated 20-25 hectometers per year. We have a recharge under that survey of 2005 of 6 or 7 hectometers a year. So our overexploitation is enormous. And the effects we can see here on this spring,
Yes.
brought to the attention of the public by Jose Maria Calafor in 2014, now in 2020, this spring is retreated, I would say, over 200 meters backwards and is no longer flowing outside. Previously, the water flowed outside.
Yes.
And then we set up a dam to go inside the tunnels to feed the village.
Mm.
Now, the water comes from inside the tunnels and feeds the village, and there's no water going into the tunnels from the outside because of the effect of the double whammy. One is 6 million olive trees, which is more severe than almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
Secondarily, it is the desertification of this Mediterranean area, which under the IPCC is now declared a semi-arid domain.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not anymore classified as a Mediterranean climate. We're a semi-arid domain, which the International Panel on Climate Change says this is going to get more arid. our experience this year, we're now in 2020. I was the Vostal Maria report 2 weeks ago. And this is a drought the like of which we've not seen for 100 years. We've not had our autumnal rains. It's like, if we were in Africa, you say, okay, well, thanks be to God, we're not relying on harvests, but there is no rain, so there's no growth. In the days of old, say, even 150, 200 years ago, the terraces, which you can hardly see terraces here, but there are terraces in these mountains. They were built using stone by the Moors. There must have been many people living here. And when it rained, as it did, the seeds were sown in September, and they would then be harvested in February or March. There's no rain, there's no harvest. You can see there is very little green vegetation.
Of course, this is Los Molinos de Rio Aguas, which is the water mills of the Aguas River.
That's right.
And obviously they bring the grain here to be ground and turned into flour.
Yeah, we used
that
to be.
That is no longer.
There were actually 4 mills here, with one olive mill, which is over that way, and then 3 mills down the river. One at the top, another one down there, and then another one at the end. The one at the end was converted, must now be 100 years ago, for creating electricity, DC voltage, was in those days, and the electricity line went from Los Molinos to Sorbas. And this was the brightest, lightest village in the area, and the festivals here were full of light and bright, and there was enough water to run a turbine, big size.
Hydroelectric electricity 100 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also in that epoch, there were over 40 mills up and down this river. There were cattle here, there were sheep here. The mills were like woolen mills, like creating harappas and clothes.
Okay.
And so I'm not talking more than about 150, 160, 70 years ago. So the decline in water, the desertification occurring over this last 150 years is very marked. And I've been here 30 years, and I can also see in these 30 years how our rainfall is less reliable.
Yes.
We don't get the storms we used to get in the fall, in the autumn times. And with the olive trees, the effect on our ability to live here, they're visible.
Yes.
We who live here, we adapt. We must adapt. And so if things get more and more difficult, if the whole world situation gets more difficult, if we have a financial collapse, whatever, at least we have water, we can do drip feed irrigation, we can grow food, we can keep a chicken and a goat, because here we can, but up there, higher up the river, they can't.
Okay.
That is a really, really serious situation. It really is an ecocide situation.
And leading into the next question would be, could the problem not be solved by transportation of desalinated water to the plantations, thus reducing the pressure on the aquifer?
Okay, the question is sound, of course, and the answer is, well, yes, it could be, but we need to have the correct infrastructure to enable that to happen. So if we go back to the source, which has to be a desalination plant, which in this case is Carboneras. The Carboneras desalination plant is working at maximum capacity to feed the invernaderos and the production of vegetables in the area coming up from Nija, which is on the coast.
So the greenhouses on this side of Almeria City?
Yeah, that's right, as they're coming up the coast. About the same size as Gaza, incidentally. It's quite an interesting comparison of all those billions of people living in Gaza on that area up from the city between the mountains coming up towards Carboneras. Interesting concept.
Yes,
I kind of got that, yeah. The desalination plant's working at max. There was a plan for a phase 2. A lot of scandals about money going into people's pockets. No phase 2 in plan at the moment. The infrastructure to bring the water up over the hills would be an estimated between 50 and 60 million euros. They've got to have pipes going up 200 meters, huge storage, and then pipes and tubes all over the inner valley.
Yes.
It's a little bit like the Great Rift Valley of America, of Africa. I've traveled down the Great Rift Valley, and you see mountains on either sides and a flat bit in the middle.
Okay.
This is like actually what we see over there in mini scale.
And what about supply for the villages on either side of the plain of the desert, so to speak. Are they running out of water?
Yes, water is supplied by truck to all the villages here. In some cases, 2 or 3 times a week. In Tabanas, I hear truck comes down 2 or 3 times a week. Some of the water in Tabanas, for instance, comes from Juan Carrion, who has his huge amount of olives. He's one of the biggest investors in the super intensive olive production. The water, if that infrastructure was to go into place and the government won't pay, it's Acumed is the name of the government organization, which would if they would, but they have said no, they won't. And the putting out to private tender, the answer is no. Nobody wants to touch it because that would cost about 1 to 2 euros per ton. And if I'm using 60,000 tons a day, that is not going to be possible. It is a complete no-no.
Yeah.
So I want to expand a little bit on this because in our aim to get some leverage here, I found that even though I'd been to the United Nations and I'd enrolled a special rapporteur for the secure and safe environment, I'd been up into Brussels and had a question asked in the European Parliament. I denounced the Commission and had a petition raised in the Petitioners Committee. Everybody says, David, you're right. But what you have to do is to get a case held here in Spain, get a judgment. And then if that judgment is not what we would consider a correct judgment, then we can move in.
Okay.
And then how long do you think it'll take? 2 years, 3 years? It's slow. Even written in the paper, it's slow. So what are the administrative problems? These are the administrative problems working at what we can only describe as the highest level. We consider the European Union to be the highest level, the European Commission, the United Nations, highest level. No, but yes, this is the paradox.
Okay.
The yes is that we have an international awareness of what is happening here in El Rio de Aguas. This is, I call it like a very bright diamond of example of massive abuse of the environment. And it's very clear. You can kind of get the hand on it.
Yep.
Okay, it's that aquifer over there. It's these people here. It's those villages there. They're depopulated. And I brought this case to an international tribunal for the rights of nature in Bonn, alongside the COP23, I think it was in Bonn.
Okay.
And we did an hour's presentation. I did 20 minutes on this, and then we looked at the societal effects, and then we looked at the environmental effects. Might even be able to come up with a copy of that for your students.
If you could, that would be wonderful.
See what I can do. I don't make a promise on that,
Okay.
but that's got to be somewhere, and I think it will be the Global Alliance of Rights of Nature.
Just to recap a little bit there, this is answering the question on what are the administrative challenges you have faced, just so people can stick their ears up a little bit.
Administrative challenges. Okay, so having talked at this high level and having found we must get a case here, I've asked my contacts in the UN, do you have contact with a strong lawyer here in Spain? And it needs to be not in Almeria, because in Almeria the control of business is enormous. Small population, big movers. Okay.
Big money.
We got one. We got one of the best in Madrid, a lady called Cristina Alvarez Bacarizo. Again, from an inheritance I had, which we were talking about a little bit beforehand, I was able to spend 3,000 euros, and Cristina was happy to put a case together declaring the Junta de Andalucía as negligent since 1998. Good. We go into detail, then of course I can forward you copies of these various actions which we've taken, but it gets into a legal framework can become rather boring.
Of course, yes. Yeah, just the sort of the headlines would be great. Yeah.
Headline: we got a response from the Junta de Andalucía, the first response in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, we got one.
Yeah.
17-point plan for the restoration of the aquifer. Great, love it. We put in what they call a curso recibo, which means 3 of these points we wanted to change a little bit. No reply. A year later, group ecologists, Mediterranean, ecologists in action, We look for, and ourselves as Ecocidio El Rio, I'm like the president of our association, Ecocidio El Rio, so I get to sign documents, put the seal on them. No response, no response, no response, no response. A year later, we get a community of users.
Yes. Okay.
The responsibility of the community of users is to pressurize the Junta de Andalucía to restore the aquifer to sustainability. Now, the construction, the people who go into the community of users are the people who use the most water. So we have the people who've got the super intensive olives and the invernadero owners have the say within the community of users. They say, we're going to get water from the desalination plant. We know that's a lie.
Yes.
We know that super intensive olives, they have a lifetime of around about 7 or 8 years. They start off quickly after 3 years, good production running through, and you can just watch that loop there, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, same levels when they started. They're like hedges rather than trees. And this grape picking equipment is used to get them off the branches, and after 7 or 8 years, the branches get big. You can cut them down, but they get big, like much too big for a grape picker, so they have to be taken out.
So the machinery is no more
It won't work.
useful. Okay.
It's no longer what they say rentably, profit making.
Profitable. Yeah.
So these guys with their community of usarios, they have now, we've got about another 1 or 2 years of really profitable olive production. This is the kind of scandal thing. It's not a theory of conspiracy. It's actually,
It's a reality.
What we can see going on, and we can see a resistance to
Yes.
to any change. We can see a resistance to bringing in a hydrological survey of the aquifer, which is promised under the 17-point plan. And so I'm kind of stuck because, as Christina says, well, it's the community of usarios who have the power to push. We don't.
This is the community of irrigators.
Yes.
The water users. Okay.
That's it. And they're it's the fox and the chicken run.
Of course, yes.
And so this is a problem for the administration, for us. And the problem I have with the administration is that we've got the really high vested interest in control of the ability, the demand, the necessity for a survey of this aquifer, which has not been done since 2005. So we're kind of stuck, and the way forwards is people power.
And what would you tell the students who are listening to you today? How could they help?
It's to form groups together within the universities to demand respect for nature, because when we, as our human population, as our society, continue to feel that we own nature, and because we own it, that especially in the large corporations, we own it, we buy it, we own it, therefore we are free to destroy it because we own it. We, as society, we need to become aware that this nature which surrounds us is not to be owned. It is to be accepted as the facilitator of our lives. Because without this environment which surrounds us, we cannot survive, because we are part of and not owners of. So the paradigm shift that we need to do, which is like 180 degrees from we buy this, we own this, we extract what we want from this, and then we leave.
So scavenger mentality, basically.
The mining in particular, because I'm really quite involved in the mining,
Yes.
and we can look at this extraction of water as the mining of water. It is not renewable. We're mining it out. We're mining out the land there. So for students, get together, become really aware of what is sustainability. Sustainability looks to me for our awareness to change into an awareness that we are part of. We are not senior to. Our duty is to support and understand and to learn about this system which surrounds us. In each and every country, this system surrounds us. In each and every culture. And to understand the nature of the nature. Use that word, goes in twice. And to really get an understanding of that nature. And then look and see how we together can work for the protection of that nature and for the introduction, for giving nature rights. You know, and it's not long ago that women did not have rights, and that women were considered to be a chattel of the man, to be owned by.
Yes.
Well, nature and women are the creators of life, and we need to expand and give nature her ability to support us and to love nature.
Before she takes it into her own hands.
Well, she won't. She don't give a toss.
Well, we need oxygen.
Yeah. I mean, if we mess with the system begins to break down. When the system breaks down, this is purely how it is.
Yes.
You know, as the ice melts, up in the Arctic, the sun shines on, the ocean gets hot, the methane gas comes out from the bottom, the permafrost melts, and the cycle of air as in jet stream, as in the cycle of the Gulf Stream, the whole cycle around the planet starts to change, and that's what happens because we humans lost the plot. We didn't even get the plot. We started an economic system under Martin Friedman, whatever, especially in the 70s, and we said, well, we need to get everything, and it's the market economy and the environment. What's that? You know, it was a little bit like that, and so here in 2020.
And to start winding the interview down a little bit now, the final question would be, in general, what role do environmental eco-warriors like yourself have in reducing environmental degradation, and would you call this threat desertification in this area specifically?
What is our role for a start? I think our role is to be inspiring. I hope I've managed some
definitely. You inspired me, all right.
And also, I'd like to make a point here. I remember we were talking a little bit earlier about saying, "Hey, it all looks so depressing. Let's get to the reality bit," and this is where it comes in.
Stories.
I take my camera. I took my camera to the end of the valley where the quarry had bought a load of land there, about 30 hectares, and they were stripping of the vegetation. And I was a little bit slow. I thought that maybe it was against fire risk, but then they were putting in, irrigation. So I took pictures. I could see that this was a plan. I found the plan was to put 1,200 almond trees per hectare. We're about 800 meters from the source of our river, and there's a borehole in there, and I was able to take the pictures, get the facts, get the details, and any student, anybody, any human being can do this. Get the pictures, get the facts, access the land registry. It's not so difficult, everything online these days. See what permission's granted. Notice that this is inside a Nature 2000 site, and we have protection of species and protection of habitat. Take picture. Is this protection of habitat? So I send with the network to a group of Ecologists Mediterranean, Ecologists in Action. Hey guys, this don't look very good, does it? You know, pictures, catastral, the land registry maps, permissions granted, and great. The guys get on the case, and in that within 2 weeks we got to stop. Done that with 2 illegal boreholes as well. So what I'm saying here to anybody basically is, like, we need to get off our backsides and out into the environment and see where we can put leverage to stop what are very clearly abuses of nature and as a result abuses of our own personal lives. We study with the resources available in a university, as we have sustainability resources. What is sustainable? What are we learning here? We also have lawyers learning law. We have environmental law. And when a university starts to come together to protect nature and the environment as being the most important thing that we have in our world, because without this we don't have life. And having university students getting together and saying, this is a problem. We can have the government say climate emergency. What are they doing? Not a lot. But we get into the universities, because remember that the average age of human beings on this planet is 29 years old. So the power and the force is going to come from the younger generation. I am 72 years old. I've been selected by the United Nations as an expert on Earth jurisprudence, which is simply rights for nature, to work with the United Nations to look for the success of the plan for the sustainable goals, 17 sustainable goals by 2030, looking at what is harmony with nature. And so there you go. Not everybody can be there, but what we need who are there, so putting myself there with my fancy hat on, my United Nations hat, is to get this flow of energy coming up from the roots up to these bodies up here, or in the International Criminal Court, the End Ecocide group. We presented our film From Harm to Harmony. I went up to the International Criminal Court for part of this event and saying this is why we need to criminalize ecocide. And I can give you a link to that film.
Much appreciated.
Okay.
Well,
how are we doing?
We're going to have to wind up.
We've done it.
Excellent. I mean,
Thank you.
I can see we could carry on for a lot longer, but for this interview, I think we need to wrap it up for today.
Okay.
And once again, to say thank you on the part of Hazel Faulkner from Middlesex University, and on my part, Andy Mortimer, for having dedicated yourself completely to this, and also to Ryan for being the cameraman today. Thank you very much indeed for your assistance. Really appreciate that. Well, that's about it. If you'd like to say some final words just to infuse the students a little bit more.
Well, great. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you all here. Quite sure which camera are on here. Hi.
This one there.
That one. Really great pleasure. I'm really open for collaboration, for ideas. For if I can be of any assistance to you guys, then I'm here. We want to move. We want to move forwards. We want to create results. I think that's the bottom line. We could go blah, 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 blah. If there are no results at the end of the game, what's the point?
Yeah.
So, okay, guys. It's been a pleasure being with you all. And look to see any of you who wish to be here in person. Hope to see you in person. Bye for now.
Thank you very much indeed. Excellent.